Get on your feet. Here's your starting lineup for Toasted STL. Tom Franklin, the man called Wags, Scott Tobin, and Blues Fan Reacts.
Good evening and welcome into the Toasted Tavern. Make sure you guys have a nice adult beverage on hand as you get a chance to listen and rant with us about the world of sports. And honestly, it's the Midwest bias. We're going to be talking a lot about the Cardinals and the Midwest, and we're so glad to have you. And Scott, I know we didn't have this the last couple of nights because we're still trying to piece some stuff together, but we got Tom freaking Calhoun introducing us for this. The voice of the Blues, man.
It's pretty cool, man. It's pretty cool. And we've got some other voices that will be coming up here in the next coming days, introducing and doing some promos for us, too. So all kinds of really cool stuff we've got going on. But, yeah, to have Tom Franklin call out your name is pretty dang cool.
Yeah, and those other audio pieces are coming in the next couple of days, so make sure you stick with us and catch those because we have been absolutely blessed with the amount of amazing people that have been associated with us so far and will continue to be associated with us. So we are so thankful for what we've been able to get.
Yeah, absolutely. To hear Tom Franklin gives me goosebumps to hear him say my name and the other voices that we have coming. Same thing. I know you said the same thing when you heard it last night. It's like, man, to hear these people that we've listened to and looked up to for a long time talking about us is going to be pretty cool. And I'm excited for everybody to hear all of this stuff when it's all finished.
Same here. All right, well, we've got a lot of stuff to get to today. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world of baseball, the NHL, the NBA. We're going to have some great segments for you, and we kind of want to start off with the one that's going to, I guess, piss us off the most because it's not just one team that's pissing us off. There's other things going on in the world of baseball that basically want to have us throw things at the TV because of what's going on. And as we dive into this, it's the spiral continues. The St. Louis Cardinals, all I can say is, they're in Detroit the last couple of days to play the Tigers, a last place team, by the way, a team that you should just absolutely roll over, and they get swept by the Tigers. Not so much because the pitching was poor, not so much because the offense was bad. It's kind of a combination of both. I mean, Johan Oviedo blew up the other night, and today John Gant didn't go more than 3 innings. So, the pitching woes are there, but when it comes down to it, an offense that gets you 4 runs over the course of two days against the last place Detroit Tigers team, my mind is just absolutely blown as to how poor this team is playing this year. And if you listen to Mike Shildt's postgame comments, he basically came out and said, tomorrow you're going to see some really big surprises in the lineup. And I want to get to that in a second. I just want to get your reactions from the last couple of games, and then we'll dive into what surprises may be in store tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, there's just no part of this team that's playing well right now. You're not pitching well. You're not playing defense well. The offense is just anemic. I mean, it's hard to watch. It's painful to watch. When your starting pitchers can't get through 3 or 4 innings. I mean, we saw it yesterday. You talked about Oviedo. He was at 27 pitches going into the 4th inning, and then he throws almost 50 in the 4th inning. I mean, that just can't happen. And today with John Gant, I mean, he got through the first 2 innings. He walked 2 in the 2nd inning. Then at the top of the 3rd, the Cardinals come out. They get you 2 runs. Arenado hits a home run. Tommy Edman drives home a run. And then Gant comes out and walks the first 2 guys, to start that next inning. And the next thing you know, 1 hit, and they've got 3 runs, and, you're trailing again. So, it's just a snowball thing, man, because, the offense is just frustrated because the pitching has been so poor that I'm sure they feel like no matter what they do, their pitching is not going to support them. And the same thing with the defense. We've seen so much bad defense and so many errors, but so much of that, too, goes back to the pitching and the lack of the ability to throw strikes. These guys get back on their heels and are just bored out there because you're throwing 40 pitches an inning and 10 of them are strikes. And so everything is just completely out of whack, and this team doesn't even look like a major league ball club right now.
And we talked about it on Monday. This team has the worst walks per 9 inning of anybody in the league at almost 4.5 walks per 9 innings. And it's to your point. They can't seem to put anything together. And even when they do go out there and score runs and give your team a lead, the fact that you have guys that cannot get a clean inning. I mean, that's the worst thing to have happen is you go up and you score a couple runs and then your pitcher goes out and either walks a couple, gives up a couple of hits, doesn't have a clean half inning after that, and any momentum that you guys have gotten, it just goes away completely. And John Hefner is right. He goes, the worst thing about this is that everyone is losing, and we can't catch up. It sucks. Like we're playing in a division where we're still like only 4.5, 5 games out of first place, and yet we're under 500 right now. It's so frustrating. And I want to get to this Mike Shildt stuff. You know, what kind of changes are we potentially going to see tomorrow in the lineup that may shock people?
I don't think there's nothing that they can do with this lineup right now to shock people. You know, what's a shock? I mean, there's nobody in the minor leagues right now that you can bring up and put in this lineup that's going to do anything. There's nobody on the bench that you can put in there and do something. What are you going to do? Have Arenado hit 8 and have, DeYoung hitting first and just, flip people. I mean, that's basically the only thing they can do because they have no other options right now.
You talked a little bit about it on Monday. What are maybe they going to put Dylan Carlson in the leadoff spot? Is that entirely a possibility that you slide him up there? Yes, it's one spot, but maybe you put Carlson up at the top of the lineup, and then maybe you put DeYoung in the 2 hole, get him in front of a guy like Arenado, because Arenado and Goldschmidt, they're doing enough right now to be like, okay, they're hitting, they're not producing a ton, but the guys in front of them can't get on. Maybe you slide a guy like DeYoung up into the 2 hole, put Carlson first, DeYoung second, keep Arenado and Goldschmidt there. Maybe that generates something, pitches for him to see. Then maybe they get on base, or maybe you give a Carlson on base and DeYoung can bring him. I mean, like you said, I don't know what they can do that would really shake up this lineup and make people go, oh crap, I got to start producing.
Yeah, I mean, because you can't really, that's what people are saying. Oh, Paul DeYoung doesn't need to be playing right now. You need to put him on the bench. Okay, let's put Paul DeYoung on the bench. Who's playing shortstop? Have you seen what Amundo Sosa's doing offensively? He's not hitting it all now. I mean, his average has fallen like 150 points in the last 2 weeks. I mean, you can't do that. Yachty's struggling, but you can't put Andrew Knizner in there because Knizner is barely hitting 200 and hasn't hit, since like the first week of the season. So that doesn't work. You're not going to take Arenado out because he's struggling and put Matt Carpenter in at third base. Well, I mean, Mike Shildt might, but normal people wouldn't do that. I mean, there's just nothing other than totally going out of the box, and maybe that's what you have to do. I'm going to give Brad Thompson some credit. I was listening to 101 today, and he came up with this idea, and he said, you know what? Maybe at this point, because he pretty much said it. He said, right now this team is bad. He's like, maybe you have to go down to the minor leagues and say, all right, we know you guys might not be completely ready, but Nolan Gorman, Matthew Liberatore, you're coming up for a couple of weeks. We're going to speed this process along, and we're going to see if you can put some life in this ball club. And other than doing something like that, because, I mean, let's face it, Lars Nootbaar not going to turn this team around, although he did have a triple today and did get an RBI yesterday on a sacrifice fly. But, I mean, he's not the bat that's going to make this offense all of a sudden turn around. If you bring up Nolan Gorman, does that light a fire under somebody? Does somebody go, okay, here comes this kid who's tearing it up in Double-A. Maybe you stick him in the lineup and maybe he provides a spark? Maybe. I mean, it could happen, but he could also really come up here and struggle like we saw Dylan Carlson early last year when he first came up. Same thing with Matthew Liberatore. Do you say, okay, kid, you're not coming up here to be the savior, but go out there and give us 5 solid innings every 5th day. Is that his reward? Because, he wanted to go to the Olympics. It doesn't look like the Cardinals are going to be able to let him do that. So do you say, okay, we're not going to let you go to the Olympics. We're going to keep you with the organization, but we are going to promote you. And instead of pitching for the United States, you're going to get your major league opportunity. Maybe something like that's what they've got to do, because going out there, every couple of days and throwing John Gann out there, and at this point, Johan Oviedo and Carlos Martinez and expecting big results. It's just, I mean, it's insane at this point because we've seen what they are. They're not getting, this is what they are, you know?
Well, and you also have guys like Zach Thompson down there as well that could potentially come up. I don't know. He's not been pitching great this year, but that might be another one of those just to shake up things. As Guy Bensing, the Hawaii Blues fan, a fan of the show, and we're fans of him as well. So, hey, Guy, maybe that's something that shakes up. You know, a guy like Jordan Walker is hitting down in the minors as well. And once again, it's not so much about, like you said, bringing them up to be the savior, but maybe it's just a matter of like the guys that are playing right now, like, we've got guys in the minors that we could say, screw it, the season's over, and bring these guys up and get a major league experience. Maybe it is just a game or a couple of games where you put them in there and say, this is what's coming. You can either go out there and play like you're supposed to, or we're just going to say, screw the season and bring these guys up. I mean, that might be a possibility.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, you look at a guy like Nolan Gorman and, you know, everybody says, well, he's never been in AAA. No, he hasn't. But, you know, we've seen top prospects jump from AA straight to the major leagues lots of times. I mean, there's a lot of guys that have never played AAA baseball that come up here that are top prospects and produce pretty well. So, I mean, it's a scary prospect because you don't want to bury the kid, especially since they didn't have a season last year. But when you see what he's doing at Springfield and he's just absolutely tearing the cover off the ball, I mean, in a lot of ways, and, you know, people have said this, there's not that big of a jump between AA and AAA. So, you know, while he's probably not ready for the major leagues, maybe you do bring him up here for a week and see. And if he comes up here and does something, then maybe he stays. I mean, you know, the famous quote in 1985, Whitey Herzog brought Vince Coleman up here and said, okay, kid, don't get comfortable because you're only here for a week. And Vince said, no, I'm not. I'm never going back down. You know, and we know how that worked out. So maybe something like that does happen. You just never know. But, I mean, they've got to do something at this point. You can't just sit on your hands and say, okay, well, this is what we got, and, you know, we're stuck. Because here's the thing, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but if this team struggles like this and they don't pitch and they don't hit, and you can see the frustration building on his face, I know I said he would never do this, but if this team doesn't show signs of, hey, we're going to get better, or hey, we're going to make moves to get better, how do we know that Nolan Arenado doesn't turn around at the end of the season and go, okay, the Cardinals made me the same promises that the Rockies did. They didn't try to help us win either, so I'm out of here.
It's a scary thing to think about, and it is something that has been gaining traction in circles, that it's possible. You know, he gets the respect and the admiration of the fans that are here, so that is definitely a big part of it. But yeah, I mean, if the organization is going to say exactly what Colorado did and then not do anything about it, that's the thing. Mozeliak even said last week that changes were coming, and we haven't seen it. Now, I know you look at it and you can't just snap your fingers and a change happens. You know, there have to be dance partners. All that has to find a spot and make it work. But if you're not actively going out there and trying to find things to happen, you're not going to find a dance partner. I mean, you could go out there and you could talk to Washington and say, hey, look, you know, maybe we do have to pay a little bit of a higher price to bring in a Max Scherzer, or hey, let's talk to Minnesota about Barrios or what have you. If you're not going out there and talking, you're just waiting for them to come to you and say, hey, you look like you could need help. You look like you need help. Let's find a trade that works for us. If you're not going out there and trying to fix it on your end, you're not doing anything to improve your team. And that's what Nolan Arenado dealt with in Colorado. It's kind of been the MO here in St. Louis as well. I'm not saying that Mozeliak and them haven't made improvements to this team or tried to make improvements. Like you said on Monday, they went out and they got Ozuna. They went out and got Goldschmidt. They went out and got Nolan Arenado. But it feels like with this organization, it's like a one and done kind of thing. It's, okay, we're going to go after this one guy. And once we get him, here we go. You have to build on a couple of different pieces. Look, just go back to 2011. That's the huge part. 2011. How many moves did they make in that 2011 season that got them to where they needed to be in the postseason? They made a bunch. And I mean, the big one was the Toronto move for sure, but they made a bunch of other moves. This Cardinals team, as of late, they make one move and they think that's it. And then they rely on their quote unquote depth that they do have a lot of, but it's a lot of young guys that haven't had the experience yet. So I don't know. It's getting frustrating. I can tell you that for sure.
No, it really is. And you brought up 2011. I mean, you go back and look at what the Cardinals have done, in the off season is one thing, and then you look at what they've done at the trade deadline, and you're right. 2011, they made the big Colby Rasmus move, brought in all those pitchers. Other than that, under John Mozeliak's watch, you can look at 2013. That was the year they went out and got John Lackey and Justin Masterson when their pitching staff was struggling. And that team went back to the World Series in 2013. And the only other year that you can really look at with Mozeliak as the GM and say they made big moves at the trade deadline was 2009. And you look at that year, they went and got Mark DeRosa, then they went and got Matt Holliday, and then they topped it off by going out and getting John Smoltz. And that team made the playoffs and made a pretty good run. So they did what they needed to do to make that team better and to win. And I really thought that's what they would do when they went and got Nolan Arenado. You brought Wainwright back, you brought Yachty back, you go get Arenado. How do you get to this point and be like, well, okay, well, we did that. The team's not doing real well, so, there's always next year. It doesn't make any sense. Mozeliak's talked out of both sides of his mouth. A couple of weeks ago, like you said, he was, changes are going to come soon and we're going to have to make moves and do stuff. And then you hear him this week and he's like, well, there's really no pressure on this year for us to win. We're not going to mortgage our future. We don't feel any pressure to have to win this year. It's like, wait a minute. You just told the fans that there was pressure a week ago and that changes were coming. And now you totally switched and are saying, oh, well, we're not feeling any pressure to do anything, and then they wonder why the fans are upset.
Yeah, it's exactly a great point. And Guy also has this question, or not a question. He says the statement, Shildt doesn't last until the All-Star break. Is that a move that they would make just to maybe say they could make a move? I mean, it's not like Shilt's had no success. I mean, this team has won games, but is the axe going to fall on the manager because that's the easy way out?
No, because they did that 2 years ago. They did their in 18, 3 years ago, with Matheny at the trade at the All-Star break. And that did light a fire under the team when they brought Shildt in and they almost made the postseason that year. I don't think it's going to happen because if you look at this team under Mike Shildt, they've been a second half team. Look what they did in 2019. They were about this point in 19, and then the second half they just were on fire and they made that run. In 18, like I said, after he got hired, they went on that run in the second half of the season and got really close to making the postseason last year. And even last year, the last 20 or 30 games was where they really turned it on. I mean, I know they only played 58 games last year, but the last 25 games plus is when that team really turned it on and made that postseason push. So I think because of that track record of them being a better second half team, and that even goes back to the Tony La Russa days. If you look at the years when Tony was here, that team was a way better ball club the second half of the season every year than they were the first half. So I think because of that, they don't. I think Shildt is going to make it through this season. And, this team still does have the talent. As frustrated as I am, and as I know everybody is, there is enough talent on this team that they can be in contention. They definitely need to add a piece. You have to go get a starting pitcher and probably a bench bat. But when you bring back Jack Flaherty and you get Harrison Bader back, and, that's a piece that nobody wants to talk about. But not having Harrison Bader is huge for this team because it screws up your defense. Tommy Edmonds in the outfield instead of second base. Your center field defense isn't as good. So when you get Bader back, you get Flaherty back, you get Jordan Hicks back, who nobody even talks about. He's probably going to be back the end of July, first part of August. That would be a huge piece to that bullpen. And then if you get Flaherty back, if you're somehow able to get Miles Michaelis back, which I'm not holding my breath on that one, but, you get a couple of those pieces and you add a piece, then you can move John Gant back to the bullpen. And all of a sudden, this is a totally different looking ball club. So, I mean, I'm not giving up on them, but they definitely need to do some things to try to light a spark under this team right now. And then, hopefully get healthy and make a move or two in the next month. And I think they can win this division. And I think they still can go deep in the playoffs. Honestly, I really do.
I'm right there with you. I'm not losing hope, but it is getting to the point now where maybe I'm watching a soccer game as opposed to watching a Cardinals game, because I kind of will know how a Cardinals game is going to end. Another team going in the area, in the Midwest area, it's going on in action right now. The Royals are playing the Yankees in New York. It's the top of the ninth. The Yankees lead 4-3. Carlos Santana hit a go-ahead home run in the top of the eighth for the Royals. Rougned Odor hit a 2-run shot in the bottom of the eighth to give the Yankees a 4-3 lead. There's one out in the top of the ninth right now. Aroldis Chapman on the mound for the Yankees. And another piece that we got to talk about when it comes to Major League Baseball, and this is one I know you are probably pretty hot under the collar about, and it's because we saw pretty much the worst use of it last night with Max Scherzer and Joe Girardi. It's these new Major League Baseball rules, quote unquote, about pitchers being checked. The on-field exams began on Monday. Last night was the most egregious of them all. Max Scherzer was checked 3 times during the game. Joe Girardi and the Phillies thought there was something in his hair. He kept going to it, something he does. So it's not like it was something out of the ordinary for Max, but he kept going to his hair. They kept checking him. And basically by the time the third check happened, he tossed his glove and hat on the ground. He unbuckled his pants and kept saying, "I've got nothing." And he wasn't the only guy to unbuckle his pants on Tuesday night. Sergio Romo did the same thing. He unbuckled them and dropped trow, a la Steve Lyons, on TV. And it kind of begs the question, should the TV cameras be showing these checks, first of all? And B, just let it out. Tell me your feelings and your thoughts on these on-field examinations.
I mean, I understand why they're doing it, but how did you not? I mean, you knew that spin rates were out of control. You knew that pitchers were doing this. How do you decide in the middle of the season that all of a sudden, hey, we're going to enforce this? That's just ridiculous. And to not talk to the players about how you're going to do it or what you're going to do. Rob Manfred just comes out and says, hey, we're going to start having the umpires check pitchers, and then completely disappears. You haven't heard any comments from Rob Manfred since he came up with that idea in the first place. And then to see what happened in Washington, and this was what everybody was worried about. There's going to be managers that take advantage of this, that try to throw off a pitcher's rhythm by having them checked. And that's all Joe Girardi was trying to do last night. There was no question. First of all, no pitcher is going to be dumb enough to cheat the first week that they're doing these checks, because pitchers know that the umpires are going to be out there. So if you are dumb enough to cheat right now and get caught, you need to just hang it. Pack your bags and go home, because you're too stupid to be in the major leagues if you're doing it the first week they're doing checks. But what Girardi did was ridiculous. They had Scherzer's checked once. They checked his glove. They checked his hat. Then it was hot and humid. So, yeah, he was running his fingers through his hair. That's what Scherzer said. He was like, yeah, I was sweating. I was hot. I was sweating. I was wiping sweat off my hair. And for Girardi to say, well, I thought there was something peculiar because I've never seen Max go to his hair before. Really? Have you watched every time Max Scherzer's ever pitched to know whether or not he wipes the sweat off of his head? I mean, that's just Girardi. Like I said, the Phillies couldn't hit him, so they were trying to disrupt him and get him out of a rhythm and frustrate him. And, that's what everybody said. A lot of managers are going to try to take advantage of this, and that won't be the first or the last time you see that happen until Major League Baseball comes up with a new kind of guideline to keep that stuff from happening. And the Nationals were mad enough that, their general manager, Mike Rizzo, came out and called Joe Girardi a con artist today, said, just really ripped him on the radio. And, baseball needs to come down on Girardi, because Girardi had a smile. I mean, you could tell when they interviewed him after the game that he was almost had that smile chuckle like, yeah, I got away with something here tonight. I was trying to screw Scherzer over. So you've got to come up with a better way to do this. I mean, the spin rate thing, like I said, the spider grip and all that stuff, yeah, you got to get that out of the game, because there's no need for it. There's absolutely no need for pitchers to be cheating that blatantly. But you've got to come up with a way, and you've got to come up with a way to allow pitchers to use something. If you're not going to let pitchers use rosin, like they always have, or a little bit of pine tar or whatever to get a better grip, then Major League Baseball needs to come up with a way to I can't talk, sorry. Major League Baseball needs to come out with a way to fix these balls themselves that everybody agrees on, pitchers and hitters. And before games, you come up with some kind of a little bit of a sticky tack to put on the balls All the balls are exactly the same. Everybody has the exact same thing, and you do it that way. I mean, you can't take everything away from the pitcher to where they're not getting a grip at all now, and then be like, okay, well, now guys are getting hurt because they're having to put more force on the ball to throw it, which we heard Tyler Glasnow talking about, that he thinks that's how he got hurt last week or 2 weeks ago, was because all of a sudden he couldn't get a grip because he couldn't put anything on the ball, and so he was having to put more force with his thumb and his forearm into the ball to get a grip to hold it, to try to get the ball to move like he wanted it to. So you definitely have to come up with something that pitchers can use that everybody agrees on. And then after that, if they're using something beyond what the league's agreed on, what the Players Association has agreed on, then you suspend them. But you don't just do it in the middle of the season and not really have a plan and go, okay, we're taking away everything. I mean, that's just Rob Manfred. Like somebody said, I really don't think Rob Manfred likes baseball. With all these stupid rules and all these changes that he just tries to make, it's like he has never watched the game before and doesn't care about it and is just throwing stuff up against a wall, seeing what'll stick. And it's ridiculous.
I can see that. I really can. I mean, he's a guy that I don't know how much into baseball he was. I'm pretty sure he was Bud Selig's, lawyer or something to that effect, where it's more about the paperwork than it is about the actual game itself. And he actually did have some comments today about what's been going on. He was surprised, saying, "Oh, it's working wonderfully." The whole thing on Tuesday night with Washington, that was just a one-time thing. Everything else has been going smoothly. It's amazing how amazing it's been. He sounds like somebody else that we know that likes to talk about amazing things that actually aren't amazing, but we won't get into that. And speaking about Major League Baseball finding a way to kind of prevent managers from taking advantage of this. Well, Mike Matheny in Kansas City, he's already got a plan for what happens if a opposing manager decides to be like this. He's going to have his team respond. And whether that means throwing at the opponent or what have you, they're going to do that. And that's the other part of that is if Major League Baseball isn't going to police it, the teams themselves are going to police it. And then once again, now you're getting into injuries, you're getting into fights and things like that. Also on the fact of grip. How many guys have we seen over the last couple of years get hit with baseballs that get away, not intentionally thrown? I mean, even this year, we've had a couple of them. Bryce Harper, for example, got hit in the face with a baseball because a Cardinal player could not grip it. That's the whole thing. It's not, in a lot of these instances, it's not about them trying to gain an advantage. It's for them to try and protect the players that they're facing. And guys like Garrett Cole have even come out and said, like, hey, we want to figure out a way to make something universal, like you said, that everybody uses, and it's standard across the board. No more of this back bullpen, back dugout, back clubhouse concoction that you're getting. I mean, Adam Wainwright even went out and tried some stuff a couple of years ago. He came out and said and admitted it. He goes, I tried it. It wasn't for me, and I've moved on. But even when you get guys like an Adam Wainwright who are like, I need to find something that's going to give me a grip in order to help me control the ball, that's saying something right there. And if Major League Baseball can't not see that, then there's something fundamentally wrong with the league, and they need to find a way to change.
No, they absolutely do. Because anybody that's ever pitched, thrown a baseball will tell you how slick, especially a new baseball, can be trying to get a hold of it. Even pitching back in Legion and high school days, if you didn't have a little bit of dirt, a little bit of rosin, something on that ball, it was hard to get a grip on it. It just is. And so, to punish guys that are using dirt and pine tar and that kind of stuff that, that they've always used, a little bit of suntan lotion, that's not making the ball do anything really different. It's getting a grip. It's really not going to affect the spin on the ball or anything else. So, I mean, why take that away from pitchers? That it just doesn't make any sense. Going back to Garrett Cole, I don't have a whole lot of respect for anything that Garrett Cole says, because did you hear his press conference last week where they asked him if he'd ever used anything, and he said, I don't know how to answer that? Like, I mean, he was humming and hawing and stumbling all over. It's like, just come out and admit it, say, yeah, I did it, and now that the league is against it, I'm not going to use it anymore. That's all he had to do. Do what Wainwright did. Yeah, I tried it. I didn't like it. I'm not using it anymore. But Cole made himself look like an idiot during his conference. But, yeah, And there's still going to be pitchers that are going to try to come up with something. You know, I mean, there's guys that are going to try to cheat no matter what you do. But, you know, baseball's just got to come up with, like we said, with that thing that everybody agrees on. And then if pitchers get caught using anything else, then you suspend them for, you know, a couple of weeks, a month, whatever, and you don't pay them. That was the other dumb thing. Okay, we're going to suspend you for 10 days, but you still get paid. Really? I mean, yeah, you're hurting their team because the team can't bring anybody up to take that roster spot. But are you really hurting some of those players? Because some of those pitchers that are doing that, they don't really care about the team. It's just about them and their money anyway. That's why they started doing it in the first place, to try to make more money when they became free agents. So, I mean, if you really want to stop it, that wasn't the right way to go about that either. And again, it just shows how half-assed this whole idea was.
Yeah, it really, really is. All right, we're going to leave that to bed because I think we've kind of vented our frustration enough. We're going to go ahead and move on to NHL talk because we've got some St. Louisans in action tonight, and we've got a potential spot being punched in the Stanley Cup Finals tonight as Tampa Bay is in New York tonight, trying to close out that series. They lead 3-2. We're in the third period. The Lightning jumped out to a 2-0 lead early on in this game. They scored a goal in the first period, and then Anthony Cirelli made it 2-0 in the second before Jordan Eberle got the Islanders on the board. And just within the last couple of minutes, St. Louisan Scott Mayfield notched the score at 2, and we are 2-2 with 6:29 to go in the third period as Pat Maroon and the Tampa Bay Lightning look to move on to the Stanley Cup Finals for the second year in a row. This has been a hell of a series, and honestly, these two series have been absolutely amazing. And the Lightning are coming off of a huge win, 8-0 in Game 5 to give them that 3-2 lead. Are you? I know you're not an Islanders fan. You're a Rangers fan. I get it. Are you surprised or are you impressed by the fact that the Islanders have been able to come back, not just from an 8-0 loss, but also from being down 2-0 early in a game-clinching one for the Lightning? Are you surprised or impressed that they were able to come back and at least get this game tied and maybe win this game and force it to 7?
Yeah, you have to be. Because like you said, after they got blown out 8-0, it would have been really easy to pack it up and say, okay, season's over, especially when you go down 2-0 tonight. But to fight back and tie that game, you do have to respect the grit and the toughness and the fight in that team. And so, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this game plays out the rest of the way. But, yeah, you definitely have to give them a ton of credit for having that fight within the team.
And that's what makes the Stanley Cup playoffs so amazing, is because any team can win on any given night. I mean, we saw Colorado and Vegas. Colorado a 9-1 victory in Game 1 against Vegas, and then Vegas wins 4 straight. So a blowout victory does not necessarily always guarantee success and being able to move forward in these playoffs. So we'll keep an eye on that game as we go along. The other series going on right now is Montreal and Vegas. Montreal was a winner last night, 4-1. They take a 3-2 series lead, heading back home to try and clinch this series. Montreal's been phenomenal this postseason. They've been the surprise story. They've been just absolutely a locomotive going through these playoffs. And I was talking to some guys last night at hockey, and I know they're not the same team, but this is an eerily reminiscent of the 2019 St. Louis Blues. They've got good goaltending. They play a very sound defensive game, and they score timely goals. Now, the Blues had a little bit more goal-scoring firepower than the Canadians had this year, but is it kind of crazy to think that this is kind of a 2019 St. Louis Blues style team, and they very well could go on to win a Stanley Cup?
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see the comparison. So the fact that Montreal has good goaltending like the Blues, is that because part of Montreal's goaltending tandem is the same as that 2019 Blues goaltending tandem, Mr. Jake Allen?
You know how much of a Jake Allen fan I was. I was shocked when they moved him and didn't re-sign Alex Pietrangelo, because for me, that was, if you're moving Jake Allen, it's because you're re-signing Pietrangelo. Why you decide to move Allen and not, sign a guy like Petro? I would have much rather have kept Binnington and Allen together because they both push each other. They're both 1A, 1B type goaltenders. They're not solely starters. They have to play off of each other. Yes, one guy would get the bulk of play, but they have to have somebody to one up. And Ville Husso doesn't one up Jordan Binnington. Although Husso did play better as the year went on, having a guy like Jake Allen in net with Binnington would have been so much better the last year or two that I'm shocked that they did that move. And to put Jake Allen with Carey Price, that's a great move by Montreal. And you have to remember, what was the big key in 2019 for the Blues? It wasn't necessarily the on-ice play. It was phenomenal, don't get me wrong. But it was Jake Allen emulating the goalies that they were going up against and giving his offense and defense a look at what they were going to be expecting. I guarantee you that's exactly what Jake Allen's doing for Montreal right now. And that's, from my eyes, that's the reason they're successful.
Yeah, I'm sure he is. I mean, they'd be stupid if he wasn't doing that same thing. And, and like you said, Jake Allen was a big part of that team because of that stuff and his leadership in the locker room and the clubhouse. And I'm sure he's brought that to Montreal and helped that team. And, I can definitely see the comparisons to that team and the 2019 Blues team in general.
Is it going to be weird seeing potentially two Eastern Conference teams, generally two Eastern Conference teams, in the Stanley Cup Finals?
It is. It's weird to say that Montreal's in the Western Conference Finals. It's every time I look at that, I'm like, that can't be right. It just doesn't seem natural. But yeah, it'll totally be strange. But it's interesting, and isn't it crazy how many St. Louis connections there are to all four of these teams that are still standing?
Yeah, you've got Jake Allen and Joel Edmondson in Montreal. You've got Ryan Reed, Alex Pietrangelo in Vegas. You got Scott Mayfield on the Islanders. And really, you've got a little bit more St. Louis connections with the Islanders because, Al Arbor was a former Blue, coached the Islanders for a long time. There are connections still there. And then over in Tampa Bay, you've got Pat Maroon, who, come on, if he goes 3 for 3, that's just insane. I mean, you saw it back in the days of Montreal when they won God knows how many straight in a row, and you've got guys with rings on all their fingers and some of their toes. So it's not unheard of, but it's more so unheard of in the age of free agency. And to see Pat Maroon potentially play for a third straight Stanley Cup, I'll be perfectly honest, the parade needs to come back if he does.
Right. I agree. Here's a question for you. If Pat Maroon wins a third title, how many more Car Shield commercials are we going to have to see Pat Maroon in the next couple of years?
I don't know why he's doing it, but he's probably making money hand over fist now. He doesn't have to make those commercials.
They're pretty funny. I mean, some of them aren't the best commercials in the world, but some of them are pretty funny. There's even one now where Ric Flair's in the one with him, and I think is O'Reilly in that one too. I think Ryan O'Reilly might be in the one with Ric Flair as well.
I think it is. I think it's O'Reilly, Maroon, and Ric Flair. And yeah, I'm not a wooer. I'll put it that way. As far as the wooing going on at the Cardinals and Blues games, I am a Katie Woo fan, by the way. Though she's done a great job with the Athletics, so let's not say we're totally anti-woo. But yeah, the whole woo thing, just okay, whatever. Speaking of the 2019 St. Louis Blues Stanley Cup Championship team, one of those members officially hung up his skates today, and I wouldn't say it's a surprise because he is coming off of a pretty devastating knee injury this year, but he did feel like he maybe could go another year or two. Defenseman Carl Gunnarsson announced his retirement today from the NHL, and he's going to go down in Blues history, Blues lore. His name is going to be remembered forever. Boom Boom Gunnarsson scored the game-winning goal in Game 2 of the 2019 Stanley Cup Finals. It was the first Finals victory in St. Louis history. It's a huge moment for the Blues and for Carl Gunnarsson, but not so much as huge as the story behind how he scored that goal. If you guys don't remember, in the third period of that game, Carl Gunnarsson had a great look on goal and hit the post. And in the intermission between the third period and overtime, he and Craig Berube were relieving themselves at the urinal in the bathroom. And what does Carl Gunnarsson do? He turns to his left and he goes, "Give me one more shot." And guess what happens in overtime? Carl Gunnarsson pots home the game winner to send the Blues home with a 1-1 series tie in that finals. I mean, the story is amazing. I mean, there were so many stories during that 2019 run, but that one right there obviously sticks out above the rest. Gunnarsson was a steady player, a guy that never expected to make it, played 12 years in the league, finally got a Stanley Cup ring. What's Carl Gunnarsson's legacy in your mind going forward now that he's retired from the NHL?
I mean, it's always going to be he was a Stanley Cup champion, but I think it's got to be that goal in Game 2 because the Blues don't win that cup if Gunnarsson doesn't make that goal in Game 2 and win that first Stanley Cup playoff game, finals playoff game. My tongue is tied tonight. That Stanley Cup Game 2 finals goal to win that. If he doesn't get that goal, they don't win that game. They don't win that cup. So, I mean, Gunnarsson's he's huge in that aspect. And then I think just the leadership that you've heard about him in the clubhouse, what a huge part of the team he was in that aspect as well. I think those are the two big things with him.
When a guy like David Perron tells you how important a guy like Carl Gunnarsson is to you, especially in the locker room, that right there shows the volume of what he actually means to a team, because you've got guys that will star on the ice, and then you've got guys that are the stars in the locker room, and not so much the bombastic blah, 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 but the guys that really hold the locker room together. And that's what a guy like Carl Gunnarsson does. And for the Blues this past year, losing a guy like Alex Steen, losing a guy like Alex Pietrangelo, losing a guy like Jay Bouwmeester, and you can even throw in losing a guy like Carl Gunnarsson, even though he did play part of the season. Once you lose that kind of leadership and that locker room glue, things start to go haywire. And that's exactly what happened to the St. Louis Blues this year. And losing him now to retirement is going to be difficult. You just hope that the Blues find some way to be able to get a guy like Gunnarsson or a guy like Steen back into that locker room. And I know COVID kind of changed things up this year where people couldn't be in the locker room as much. This next season, if they can get those guys back into the locker room and really get that glue back, even if they don't play on the ice, you might see a much more improved St. Louis Blues team this year.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to ask you about that. Isn't it crazy how those core guys that were kind of the leaders of that Stanley Cup team, they're all gone. You know, it's like it was the guys that were kind of the heart and soul, the leaders of that team that played Craig Berube's style. It's amazing how quickly all of those guys are not there anymore. And, you heard Carl Gunnarsson say today that he was moving back to Sweden at the end of the summer. So I'm not sure he's going to be around the locker room a whole lot this upcoming season. But, yeah, the Blues have got to find those guys. Hope that some of these young guys that had some experience with those veteran guys in 2019 last year, a little bit of time this year, you hope that rubbed off and they kind of step up and take that role, because that's what you have to keep that tradition, to keep that legacy, to keep that Blues hockey style that, Berube wants. You need those guys to step up and fill those roles. And hopefully some of these young players, can do that. The Colton Parekos and the Robert Thomases and those guys have to take those next steps to be the leaders on this team.
If they're with this team next year. And that's the thing that's going to be rampant over the summer. You got the Matthew Tkachuk rumors, you got the expansion draft, lots of things going on, lots of balls in the air. Unfortunately, a guy like Thomas or Parayko could be gone from this team. So it's going to be a really interesting offseason for sure. You also can't forget that Oscar Sundqvist missed a good piece of this season as well. He's another one. He was a younger guy that was a core part of that Stanley Cup run. So having him back should be a huge, huge addition as well. All right, it's the end of the third period. The Islanders and Lightning going to overtime in a must-win game for New York. We'll try and keep you updated. Hopefully, we'll get a goal before the show ends here. We'll make sure to bring that to you if that happens. But let's switch gears now. Let's jump over to the NBA. And, I tell you what, we're going to talk about the Eastern Conference Finals first. But this play from last night in the Phoenix Suns and the LA Clippers game, dude, let's just watch it real quick.
Not an easy inbound with that big body in front of you. Crowder looking, throws it alley. Oh! He puts it down! He puts it down! It's over!
And they're trying to say goaltending, but that's a live basketball. He can finish it.
Right, there is no goaltending on an inbound pass.
Was that the basket counted? What a perfectly executed play. Ayton guides it in beautifully.
Unbelievable, that play. I know that I was going to bed last night as that game was ending, and I just had to stay up and watch the highlights of that. Dude, this is what the NBA playoffs has done the last couple of years to bring fans back. Absolutely an amazing moment last night.
Yeah, it really was. To end a game like that, I mean, you can't draw up that play and execute it any better than they did. And that was, to be the game-winning shot, that's pretty impressive.
And they've done this, the Suns have, without Chris Paul in games 1 and 2. They're up 2-0 in the series. Chris Paul is probable for game 3. And you have to look at the Clippers side of things and go, okay, what are you going to do to back this up? Well, Kawhi Leonard is very, very doubtful for game 3. And this is a team like the Brooklyn Nets, too, that was built to make it to the finals. What's going on with the Clips, man?
Well, they're missing Kawhi, and it just came out just a few minutes ago that he has been ruled out. He is definitely not playing in game 3. So that's a huge thing. That's a huge loss for the Clippers. That puts so much on Paul George to be the leader and the star of that team, and that's not really what Paul George is. He's kind of the Robin to the Batman of whatever team he plays on. He's not really the guy that's going to step up and be that superstar. That's never really been his forte, to make those big shots and kind of steal the moment. So it's going to be tough. And that Suns team is just good, man. And you get Chris Paul back. Devin Booker, we talked about this the other day, maybe the next big superstar. And I told you I was picking the Suns, and I like Devin Booker, and I like them even more because I didn't realize that Devin Booker is the son of former Mizzou star point guard Melvin Booker, who scored 1,500 points in his Mizzou career and was the point guard and the leading scorer on that Mizzou team in 1993 that went undefeated in the Big 8 and made it to the Elite 8 in the tournament, and were 24-4 that year. But yeah, that's Devin is Melvin's son, so that makes me like him even more and root for the Suns that much more.
Another St. Louis connection. It's almost like the Midwest has a hand in a lot of different sports. Why aren't we thought of more? Why aren't we talked about more? That's really, really odd. But that's what you get here on Toasted Tavern, the Midwest bias, because the Midwest is in everything. We make the East and West Coast biased the way that they are. So let's talk about the Eastern Conference Finals real quick, because Game 1 is wrapping up, and it is coming down to the absolute wire. You've got Giannis versus Trae Young. Who wants it more is the biggest question. I don't know if you can really ask that and not get an answer on either side, because I think both these guys really do want this. Right now, you've got 5.3 seconds left in the fourth quarter. The Hawks hold a 114-113 lead over the Bucks. I got to ask you, man, who do you think actually wins this series? Because this is going to be a tightly contested one all the way.
Yeah, I said the other day I thought Milwaukee, just because I thought they had a little bit more scoring besides just Giannis, whereas Atlanta kind of lives and dies by what Trae Young does for the most part. So I still think it's gonna be Milwaukee, but Atlanta has shocked everybody, man. Nobody thought Atlanta was gonna be at this point, and Trae Young and some of those other young stars on this Hawks team are definitely showing that they belong in the big spotlight.
Yeah, Trae Young, 46 points tonight. Giannis, 34. Drew Holiday has 33. And that's the thing you talk about. Milwaukee has a couple of different guys that can score. Chris Middleton, 15 points as well. So you've got 3 starters that are putting up double figures. And then Giannis, 12 boards, 10 assists for Holiday as well. So Giannis is actually 1 assist away from a triple-double. We'll see if he can actually get that as time is winding down in this game. It's important, and it's key for the Hawks, especially, that they get scoring from other guys on this team. You've got Collins with 23 tonight, John Collins. You've got Kevin Huerter with 13 as well. So if Trae Young can get that support, the support he didn't necessarily have at Oklahoma. He put up a bunch of points at Oklahoma, but that team lost a lot of games because they didn't have anything around him. Well, right now the Hawks have stuff around him, and they're, I think, succeeding a little bit faster than we expected them to. And if they're able to hold on to this Game 1 win, I think that's a huge shock, because Milwaukee is a team that you look at and you go, yeah, they have the pedigree to get to the finals.
Yeah, like you said, Milwaukee now, Giannis has those other guys around him, which he hasn't had the last couple of years, which has led to them getting knocked out earlier than anybody expected. And if Trae Young, if some of those other guys can step up, they could pull the upset here. And you realize that the last time that a Hawks team was in the NBA Finals, they were the St. Louis Hawks.
Hey, look at that. Another St. Louis connection. It's really odd how that's starting to work out.
St. Louis has a lot of ties to the NBA when you look around, and so many of the young stars either are St. Louis kids, or they played at Mizzou, or they played at SLU. I mean, it's crazy how many big name young rising stars in the NBA are from the St. Louis area or have St. Louis ties.
And with that being said, then obviously the NBA isn't huge on expansion. Obviously the last couple of teams were at the time Vancouver, which is now Memphis, and then you had Toronto. You don't have a whole lot of expansion. Charlotte got a team back after the move to New Orleans. Do you see St. Louis ever getting a shot at being able to host an NBA team?
I hope at some point. Unfortunately, like they screwed the Blues over, the Lorries really screwed St. Louis over, because that was our best shot. If they would have waited and done a couple of things different, the Grizzlies would have ended up in St. Louis. That's where the NBA wanted them to be. They almost had a deal done, and then Bill Lorry got impatient and pulled out because he didn't like the way the financials were lining up and some stupid stuff that shouldn't have happened. But yeah, we should have an NBA team in St. Louis right now. But hopefully it'll happen at some point, whether it's expansion or, if a team ends up relocating at some point, which, a team like the Pelicans, which has moved around a lot, they're not drawing huge in New Orleans. That's not really a basketball city necessarily. So maybe a team like that could end up in St. Louis, or, as well as although with Trae Young there, hopefully they'll start drawing better. But, there's always been rumors. Atlanta's never really had great attendance for Hawks games. There were rumors at different points in time that the Hawks could come back to St. Louis. So you never know. I mean, I would love to see it. That's for sure.
Yeah, I would like to see it as well. And the game has just gone final. Chris Middleton misses a 27-foot three-pointer for the tie as the Hawks take game one, 116-113. So they lead that series 1-0. The Suns lead their series with the Clippers 2-0. So lots of great action going on there. The overtime period is getting ready to start in New York as the Lightning and the Islanders are tied at 2. And jumping around the scoreboard real quick, we'll catch you up on some Major League Baseball scores. The White Sox a 4-3 victory over the Pirates. The Tigers once again have beaten the Cardinals 6-2. Brewers a 3-2 victory over the Diamondbacks. The Yankees held on to beat the Royals 6-5. Okay, that game got interesting because we told you earlier that it was a 4-3 Yankees lead because the Royals went up in the 8th, in the top of the 8th. The Yankees went up in the bottom of the 8th. Well, in the top of the 9th, the Royals scored 2 runs on a bases-loaded walk and an O'Hearn infield single. But in the bottom of the 9th, Gabby Sanchez hits a game-tying home run, and Luke Voit singles to left to give the Yankees the 6-5 victory. So at least one team in Missouri is, even though they didn't win, they're at least making things competitive.
And hey, the team from Missouri, the Royals, got beat by a St. Louis kid, Luke Voit, who gets the game-winning hit for the Yankees. And good for Luke Voit because he's been hurt and missed most of the season. So good to see him back in the Yankee lineup.
Absolutely great to see. And just so you guys know, the Euros in Europe are going on right now. It's a soccer thing. I know. I'm a huge soccer fan. As you can see, we got the St. Louis City logo up there on our screen. We cannot wait for St. Louis City SC to begin play here. They are going to have a minor league team essentially here beginning next year. So as you see, if you go downtown to watch a Cardinals game, you'll see the stadium rising up very, very quickly. It's because they are going to be fielding a team here in one of the MLS sub leagues, which will eventually feed into St. Louis City SC. So make sure you keep an eye on that. Germany, my team outside of America, they survived a scare from Hungary today. They ended up tying 2-2, which has enabled them to push into the round of 16. They were actually trailing 2-1 late in that game before getting a couple of goals late. Goretzka scores in the 84th minute to tie it up. And I tell you what, man, Germany does not look great. I hope that they take this scare and kind of run with it and improve a little bit because I'm a huge German fan. I watch them as much as I possibly can. And for them to potentially not have made it to the round of 16 and maybe go out early, they face England in the round of 16. Holy moly, that's going to be a fun game for sure. If they go out early, they may have to start rethinking about Lowe at coach. Maybe they make a move after the Euros before the World Cup coming up.
Yeah, that would be a big shock for Germany to go out early. That's not something that normally happens to them in soccer. So that'll be interesting to pay attention to for sure.
Yeah, they're kind of in a transition. They've got a lot of the old guard still there. The young guard is still coming in. Their U21 team won the U21 Euros, so they've got a lot of talent coming in. It's not there yet, and that's that they're in that transition period. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. So round of 16 matchups that are already set in the Euros. You got Wales and Denmark, Italy and Austria, the Netherlands and Czech Republic, Belgium and Portugal. Cristiano Ronaldo did advance to the next round as well. Croatia and Spain, France and Switzerland, the aforementioned England and Germany, and then Sweden and the Ukraine. So a lot of really, really good matchups going on in European soccer beginning the 26th, this Saturday. You've got 4 days of round of 16 coverage over on ESPN and ABC. So make sure you check that out. Who knows? Maybe you're going to see a future St. Louis City SC player playing there as well, because they're going to have to make a big signing at some point, and it could come from one of these European teams for sure.
Absolutely. It would really kind of would surprise me if somebody from over there, a somewhat big star, didn't end up getting signed by St. Louis.
Well, they've got one of the greatest German soccer analysts, coaches, what have you, and lots. So man, he's going to pull something out of his hat for sure. Team USA roster is set in the Olympics. Harden actually has pulled out. You've got Zach Levine, Jeremiah Grant, James Harden is out. Kevin Durant will be there, as well as Draymond Green, Damian Lillard, Bradley Beal, Bam Adebayo, Jason Tatum. Kevin Love is also on the team. 3 players that are on the roster that are still playing are Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, and Devin Booker. So we'll see if they are able to make it as well. So Team USA looking like they are fielding a team that's going to be pretty good. Is it a shoo-in in your mind that they win a gold medal again?
I'm not going to say it's a shoo-in because a lot of those European teams continue to get better. So I think it'll be tough. I think they'll make it to the gold medal game. I'm not going to say it's a shoo-in just because we've seen so many of those European teams, like I said, improve over the last few years. So it should be an interesting basketball round in the Olympics, and a bunch of St. Louis ties to the USA team there as well.
Yeah, and Beal and Jason Tatum. So make sure you catch the Olympics as they come up here very, very shortly. It's going to be a fun time here over the summer because we do have a lot of really, really good sports going on. So, Scott, give us a little bit about what you got going on this week. I know you called some Legion games this week. We may have a couple more, and then the Cardinals are back in town starting tomorrow.
Yeah, did a couple of different Legion games. I actually did a girls softball game, JUCO college girls softball game yesterday. So that was fun. I hadn't done a softball game yet this summer, so that was a good time. Done a couple of American Legion games in the last week. I was out in St. Charles actually last Friday, saw a good game out there. And going to be heading to do some Cardinals stuff starting tomorrow night. I'll be out until next Thursday before I jump back on the show.
Hey, and you know what? I might see you tomorrow night because I'll be at the Cardinals game as well. It's soccer jersey night, so it's going to be a lot of fun. And we got a couple other things in the works this weekend that may bear fruit in the next coming months. So make sure you keep an eye there. And make sure you guys follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube at Toasted Tavern, as well as Toasted STL. Lots of great stuff coming up in the pipeline. We want to thank you guys for joining us. It's been a great night talking. Yeah, we had to rant a little bit about Major League Baseball, but at least we got something to talk about. I'll put it that way. Make sure you join us every weeknight here at 9 o'clock on Toasted Tavern. For Scott, I am Wags. Thank you guys for joining us, and have a great rest of your night.
For new episodes, merchandise, and behind-the-scenes content, be sure to visit ToastedSTL.com or follow us on Twitter at Toasted St. Louis. I'm the voice of the Blues, Tom Calhoun. Let's get toasted!